In a kingdom nestled among rolling hills, a king ruled with diligence, yet his heart was heavy with unrest. His mind, once sharp and resolute, had become a tangled web of thoughts, ensnared by the smallest of matters. A misplaced scroll, a fleeting disagreement among advisors, or the fleeting discomfort of a chilly morning breeze would consume his attention, pulling him away from the weightier concerns of governance and the well-being of his people. The more he dwelled on these trivialities, the more his clarity slipped, leaving him restless and adrift in a sea of endless distractions. His days blurred into nights, each moment marked by a growing sense of chaos within. Determined to reclaim his focus, the king sought the guidance of a sage, renowned for wisdom that cut through the noise of the world like a blade through silk. The sage lived in a modest dwelling, surrounded by nothing but the simplicity of nature. When the king arrived, weary and burdened, the sage welcomed him with a calm that seemed to still the very air. Without a word, the sage placed before the king an empty glass jar, its transparency catching the light in a way that made it seem both fragile and eternal. Beside it, he set 3 items: a handful of lemons, a pile of small pebbles, and a bowl of fine sand. The sage's eyes, steady and piercing, posed a silent challenge. Fill the jar with all 3. The king stared at the objects, his mind racing as it so often did. The lemons were vibrant, their curves bold and commanding. The pebbles, smooth and unassuming, seemed ordinary in their presence. The sand, fine and fleeting, shimmered faintly, as if whispering for attention. At first, the king's thoughts scattered, tempted to overcomplicate the task. He imagined pouring the sand first, as it seemed the easiest to handle, or perhaps mixing the items in some intricate order. But as he lingered, a spark of clarity emerged. He reached for the lemons, placing them carefully into the jar, their forms settling snugly against the glass. Next, he took the pebbles, letting them tumble into the spaces between the lemons, filling gaps with quiet precision. Finally, he poured the sand, watching it cascade over the pebbles, slipping into every crevice, until the jar brimmed with all 3, full to the top. The sage's lips curved into a knowing smile, a gesture that carried both approval and invitation. He gestured for the king to sit, and in the stillness that followed, the lesson unfolded. The sage explained that the lemons represented the most vital aspects of life, those endeavors and relationships that held true meaning, the ones that shaped the heart and soul of existence. The pebbles symbolized the everyday tasks, necessary but not defining. The sand, fleeting and countless, stood for the trivialities that so often clamored for attention, stealing time and energy from what truly mattered. Had the king poured the sand first, it would have filled the jar, leaving no room for the pebbles or lemons. So too, the sage explained, if life's trivial concerns were allowed to dominate, they would crowd out the space for what was essential, leaving the heart and mind cluttered and unfulfilled. The king listened, his thoughts slowing as the sage's words wove a tapestry of understanding. He saw his own life reflected in the jar, his days consumed by the sand of petty worries, his focus scattered like grains slipping through his fingers. The sage's lesson was clear: prioritize the lemons, the core elements that gave life purpose, and let the pebbles and sand find their place around them. By anchoring his attention on what was truly significant, the king could restore balance, his mind no longer a storm but a steady river flowing with intention. As the king returned to his kingdom, the sage's wisdom settled deep within him. He began to approach his days with newfound clarity, sifting through the demands that vied for his attention. He learned to recognize the lemons, the well-being of his people, the strength of his alliances, the love of his family, and placed them first, giving them the time and care they deserved. The pebbles, daily duties and routines, found their place naturally, no longer overwhelming but supporting the greater whole. The sand, those fleeting irritations and distractions, he let slip away, refusing to let them dictate his focus. With each passing day, the king's mind grew lighter, his decisions sharper, his heart more at peace. The kingdom flourished under his renewed leadership, its harmony a reflection of the balance he had cultivated within himself. No longer did he lose himself in the minutiae, instead he stood firm in his priorities, guiding his life with purpose. The chaos that once clouded his thoughts gave way to a quiet strength, a clarity that radiated through his actions and touched all who looked to him. The lesson of the jar became a guiding star, not just for the king but for those who heard his story. It whispered of the power of choice, of the freedom found in discerning what truly matters. Life, it taught, was not about avoiding the sand or pebbles, but about ensuring they never overshadowed the lemons. By placing the most important first, one could live with intention, unburdened by the weight of trivialities. The king's journey showed that even in a world filled with distractions, a balanced and meaningful life was possible, one where clarity triumphed, stress faded, and happiness bloomed in the spaces left open for what truly mattered.